Very excited. Wow, now it's getting to me as well. I thought I'm already so calm now, but no, I'm also excited. Very good. It's awesome to have you all here.
Yeah, same here.
Just watching the number tick out.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, people.
Hello, hello, to whomever that was. Very excited to have you all here.
Should I give it a moment or should I start, Oliver?
It's up to you, you decide.
Okay, in the interest of time, I think I'll just start now so we get the most out of it. So hi everybody, welcome to our webinar. We're very excited to have so many of you here today for this amazing panel. Of course, as I'm sure everyone's familiar with, we got to start with a few housekeeping rules. So I'd just like to ask you to mute yourself at all times, just so we don't distract from the speakers. Also, we will be recording this event. If you do not want to be seen, please turn your cameras off. Otherwise, we would encourage you to turn your cameras on to make it a little more face-to-face personal. Other than that, if you have any questions, please start submitting them as soon as possible into the chat. We have about 10 to 15 minutes at the very end where we'll be taking questions from the audience, but we're going to ask, just given the number of people, to avoid any confusion and to get as many questions as possible, we ask that you just submit them through the chat and we won't be turning on people's mics. I will then collect them and we'll give them to our moderator to ask. Also, just to prepare in advance, we will have a Mentimeter poll coming up. So if you want to start now and get that loaded on your phone or on your computer, please go ahead and use the QR code. I will also post the link right now in the chat. And you can then sign on and use the code that's on screen, the 9098 code. And then we'll load the questions shortly. Now I will pass the floor to Oliver, who will speak a little more about YES Europe and why we're all here.
Perfect, thank you very much. I'm excited that all of you joined the event today. I think it's going to be fantastic and we're going to learn a lot. Since some of you perhaps are not familiar with Yes Europe yet, this is your little introduction, your little teaser perhaps. Yes Europe is an European NGO and we have representations and teams in around 16 European countries. So us now organizing the events, we are Team Germany of this big NGO. Our mission, quite simply put, is to connect young future energy leaders from different disciplines and from different countries. We want to promote an interdisciplinary and international dialogue on energy challenges, and the goal at the end is to take responsibility for a sustainable energy transition. It is, like I already said, a great honor to have you all here. And to celebrate this, we will first take a little group photo. We will not do it in the end like many other events, but we will do it in the beginning, a very innovative thought, I think. So Sagar, this is your moment. Can you count down for us?
Yeah, I want everybody, if you can stop for a little bit sharing the slide.
Okay, I stop. I see.
I get all the amazing faces. Yes.
Very good.
Hello, everyone. So please turn on your cameras for a really nice smiling face. You can wear any kind of gadgets or smiling faces. I'll click a couple of pictures because we have 100 participants. So I would consider all the people within the group to have a nice selfie. So here we go with the first one. And make your screen a little bit clear. So yeah, you don't get the blur one. And this we go with the first one. We go with the second round. I don't see much people turning on their cameras. One more. Oh, yeah. I think we are done with the photograph. Thank you all.
Perfect. Oops. All right. Then, without further ado, I would love to give the floor to Aisha. Aisha is our board member in Team Germany, and she is responsible of projects, every project we organize. And she will be hosting our little discussion, moderating our little discussion today. Aisha?
Thanks, Oliver. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar organized by Young Leaders in Energy Sustainability Team Germany. Our topic for today is on the state of play of hydrogen storage and distribution, and we are going to hear from our three featured speakers who will give us the perspective of industry, academia, and policy in hydrogen storage and distribution. Following this, we'll have also a panel discussion, which I will be asking our speakers some questions, and afterwards we'll open also the floor for our participant to ask. So please, if you have any question, don't hesitate, just drop it on the chat box. So at the beginning, allow me to introduce our first speaker representing the industry, Vaitea Cowan, a co-founder of Enapter, a company that designs and produces hydrogen electrolyzers. Vaitea leads the Enapter marketing and communication. She's also a founding member of Women in Green Hydrogen Group and has a clear intention to inspire and hire more women at Enapter. Vaitea is also on the Forbes list under 30 Energy 2020 list and has won several awards for Enapter. We are very honored to have you here today, Vaitea, and we are really looking forward to hear more from you and learn from your area of experience. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you, Oliver, Kate, the whole team. Yes, it's really a pleasure to be here as well. I'm super excited to get to talk to peers. I think we're all around the same age, and it's fantastic to be talking to you because I think our mission at Enapter is something that is dear to all of our heart, right? We're waking up every day to fight climate change. At Enapter, our mission is to drive down the cost of green hydrogen so that it can compete with fossil fuels, because that's the big barrier today, right? With green hydrogen, we need it to be cost competitive and to be affordable for everyone. So our vision, as mentioned, is to live in a world where fossil fuels are no longer burned and where all of us can have a nice future and a livable planet. So yeah, just some ideas as well. Our average age is actually 32 at Enapter, and we're a team of 153 now. So quick growth and also very, very young spirit. So as mentioned before, we make electrolyzers. This is one of our systems here. And before diving into it, I think you all had the Mentimeter pulse. So then curious to see what you believe we can offset in regards to all the electrolyzers we will produce by 2030, which is about 58 million. So basically, yeah, we're asking you, how much CO2 do you think we'll emit? We will abate, my mistake. And hopefully you took your wild guess by now. And if not, then take a guess, and then I'd move on to our presentation because I only have like 5:30 now, and I don't want to go over. So next slide, please. Let's get it started. Nope.
Go ahead, Oliver. Just go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you. So we're going to start off by taking a look at the overall value chain of hydrogen. And you can see that how is hydrogen made, right? Let's start with the basics. Two inputs, green electricity and water. And then here comes our electrolyzer, which will split water into H2 and O2. Oxygen is released and hydrogen is stored. Hydrogen can then be used in several ways, right? So synthetic fuels, but also be used into fuel cell to generate electricity, but also direct use for industry feedstock or heating and cooling. So we really believe that hydrogen is the missing link to the energy transition because it's an energy carrier, it's an alternative hydrocarbon, and it can effectively couple all our sectors with green electricity. So everything that's hard to electrify, green hydrogen can play a role. And as you can notice, our electrolyzer is at the beginning of the supply chain. And in the next slide, we'll be giving you a few examples of our use cases today, starting off with electricity storage. This one is in Australia. Their name is Lavo, and they're making it affordable and accessible for everyone to have hydrogen energy storage at home or in their businesses. And I'll have to quickly jump to the next one to have a bit of a visual and also to see the image of the Pisua house, which is where Enapter has its roots. And again, here the home is a multi-house complex actually. So all the rooftops are covered with solar panels, and then the excess solar electricity will power the electrolyzers that will generate green hydrogen stored in these tanks, as you can see here. And the house will have over 30 hours of autonomy if it's rainy season or during nighttime, for example. Next slide, please. Heads up, it's going to be a bit fast paced so we can cover everything. Another example of electricity storage here with peak shaving. It's an unusual use case because usually batteries will take in the excess energy, and here it's actually hydrogen. So if you're curious, you can go back into it, but I want to go to the next slide so that we can then talk about another sector, which is our power to heat sector, and or our heating sector more. So our electrolyzers here, as you can see, are stacked on top of each other, and they're generating hydrogen that is then fed into boilers that burn hydrogen instead of burning natural gas. And this is an innovative boiler and also an innovative use case for green hydrogen to showcase that hydrogen can also decarbonize the heating sector. And this is in the Netherlands. Next slide, please. Okay, moving on to the industrial sector. So here we have our customers and our partners in the US. In Colorado, they're generating green ammonia, and this is used as an alternative fuel for the shipping industry. Next slide, please. Renewable methane use case in Australia, where our electrolyzers are paired with carbon capture storage technology, and the CO2 and the H2 will then create renewable methane that can be injected into the infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this is an awesome case as well. The mobility sector, where our electrolyzers are used for on-site refueling of the hypercar by Hyperion, and as well as ZeroAvia's passenger aircraft. And what's really cool here is that the electrolyzers are on-site generating the hydrogen. So at the airport, you're refueling your plane with fuel made on site. So that means you're cutting the supply chain, which cuts the cost and also has no emissions in production and in consumption of this fuel. So decarbonizing aviation sector, ZeroAvia was one player doing this, and it's awesome to see this taking place. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can just maybe click through it so we can kind of go through the animation. Thanks. So just in one word, yeah, at Enapter, we're rethinking electrolyzers as a product and ultimately a commodity, because that's how we're going to drive down the cost of green hydrogen by mass producing electrolyzers. Next slide, please. This is our electrolyzer. It's about the size of a microwave. And in the next slide, we can look at what's so special about it. So our secret sauce is our anion exchange membrane technology. And the key difference is that it's not using any noble metals. And that's essentially what helps us and enables us to drive down the cost and make low cost green hydrogen. Next slide, please. Yeah, timeline of our models. Actually, we've been bringing out a new electrolyzer every year, significantly reducing the size and the cost. And on the next slide, it's just a capture of the way that we're scaling is similar to how the automotive and the PC microprocessor it's similar to their approach to scaling. So essentially the core is the same for every product, whether it's a standard electrolyzer or whether we're going into the megawatt scale electrolyzers, we're using the same heart, the same core, and that's what enables us to drive down the cost because we're going for economies of scale and then reducing cost and also increasing the product variety and speed of development. Next slide, please. Our campus, oh, this is super exciting. So in September, we're starting the construction of our Enapter campus. And this is where we will mass produce our electrolyzers. But what's awesome about it is that we're only using green energy. So we really want to showcase that scaling up doesn't need to come at an environmental trade-off, and you can power your industrial or mass production site with renewables. Here's the showcase, and stay tuned, lots of cool stuff taking place at our Enapter campus, opening in April 2022. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is our life cycle impact zero. This is the new standard for sustainable industrial production that we're setting. So we wrote an article about it. Invite you to take a look at it if you're curious about it and also curious about circular economy. Next slide, please. Oh, here's the answer. Okay, so I'm not sure what the results were of the Mentimeter.
I will just share my screen now, Oliver, and I can show you guys what the results.
Okay, let's see what we got of yeah, how much CO2 everyone believed all of our produced electrolyzers. Wow, okay, it's actually pretty impressive. You guys got it right. I was trying to make up some things yesterday and I was like, what could make it sound, yeah, but you're right actually. So by 2030, we will yeah, mitigate as much as 2 years of the global air travels pre-COVID levels. And so that's when we manufacture 58 million electrolyzers. So yeah, 2030 is not far away. So yeah, I got lots of work to do. But yeah, just to give you an idea of how much CO2 and like the impact that we can make. And then on the next slide, it's yeah, really again like capturing our mission at Enapter to drive down the cost of green hydrogen. And yeah, happy to go into it and touch some policy aspects as well in the Q&A. And my final slide is an invitation to everyone who's here. On May 19th, we'll be organizing Generation Hydrogen, which is where we want to showcase the cutting edge, trailblazing hydrogen technology and showcase what can a future powered by hydrogen look like. It's all online and you're all invited if you're curious. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaitea. That was very impressive. I always thought like the electrolyzers are quite huge systems, but I'm shocked. Okay, so now we will pass the talk to our second speaker, who will represent also the academia. We have Aruna Chandrasekar. She's a final year Ph.D. student at University College Dublin. She is currently specialized in investigating the roles of natural gas and hydrogen in low carbon future. She's passionate about working towards environmental causes and wants to do her leaving behind a better world for future generations. We are very delighted to have you here today, Aruna, and we are really curious to hear more about the role of research and development into the green hydrogen. So please, the talk is yours.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So firstly, I would like to start, can you move to the next slide? About the opportunities of providing the big picture of hydrogen. And I think Vaitea covered a few of them. So the opportunities for hydrogen is in transport, which is a carbon intensive end use sector, for flexible electricity generation, for industrial processes, heat or raw materials. Renewable rich countries could export hydrogen to isolated parts of the world, or they can be injected into gas networks as well. Next slide. So before I go into the technical challenges that lie ahead for a hydrogen future, I would like to mention that, so currently we need to remember that our current energy system is catered around fossil fuels. So before we move to 100% hydrogen, there is some amount of transition or some amount of changes that need to happen in the infrastructure as well. And particularly for gas pipelines, they need to be renovated. So currently they're usually made of stainless steel. And injecting 100% hydrogen in these pipelines could lead to metal embrittlement, leaks and fault lines, and they need to be renovated to fiber reinforced polymers. Additionally, one of the biggest concerns for the public could be the safety measures for hydrogen, because hydrogen has a much lower flammability point. So adequate ventilation and leak detection need to be there at the end use as well as hydrogen burns with a colorless flame. So we need special flame detectors, that is adding color or a smell to the gas as well in order to ensure safety. And additionally, end-use technologies that make use of metal may not be suitable, as it could lead to metal embrittlement. So currently there is a solution. So we do have, we can integrate up to 20% of hydrogen in our current gas pipelines without needing much change in the pipelines or at the end use. Next slide. Yeah, so why are we looking at green hydrogen? So green hydrogen, I mean, Vaitea actually touched upon that as well, is basically the product of water electrolysis. This technology has been known for about 200 years, but recently it has become a popular area of research because we're looking at integrating renewable electricity. So when we burn hydrogen, the only output is water, which is safe. The byproduct of electrolysis is oxygen, which is also safe for the environment. So because it's being considered for renewable electricity integration, it's the immediate product of electrolysis. So it makes the use of renewable electricity a lot more efficient, which I'll explain in the next slide. So when we have weather-based renewable electricity, like wind, in Ireland, for example, there's a lot of wind energy. However, it's sometimes hard to forecast what the wind energy will look, what the wind profile will look like the next day, or maybe a few days ahead. The same for solar. In tropical countries near the equator, we have sufficient solar energy. However, it's only available during the day, and more energy is available during the summer months rather than the winter months. And as a result of this weather-dependent nature of renewable electricity, in order to ensure like the power grid security and security of supply to the end use customers, we still make use of conventional generation, that is gas or gas, oil, coal, peat generators are still currently being used. And renewable electricity is being curtailed in order to ensure this power grid security. And what that means is that even if there's wind or solar, we are still stopping these generators in order to ensure the system security. So what the electrolyzer can do is use this potentially curtailed electricity, and using water as an input, it can convert it into hydrogen and oxygen. And this is what is being considered, researched upon recently in order to increase the amount of renewable electricity penetration into our grid. Next slide. So the current hydrogen storage is in underground salt caverns, which is also being used for natural gas, compressed hydrogen in storage tanks. Like compressed natural gas, we can also compress hydrogen. Of course, it will require different pressures and different materials for the storage tanks. For energy dense requirements in the end use, for example, in rockets or jet fuels, which require a high energy dense fuel, we can also liquefy hydrogen or use material-based storage, basically converting hydrogen to metal hydrides. So metal hydrides are actually in Germany. There has been a very recent study on a power paste that is basically a sodium magnesium hydride that can be injected into the fuel cells, and this can be converted into electricity inside the light vehicle like scooters or cars itself. There's some very interesting research that's been going on in that. Hydrogen in general is a versatile fuel, so we can convert it to ammonia, methane, which is a major component of natural gas, and can be used with our current infrastructure in place. However, for me, one of the most interesting things to look at is, so every time we are converting hydrogen into something that will suit our current infrastructure, what we're doing is we're losing efficiency. So the next slide. So one of the major production challenges for hydrogen is maximizing hydrogen storage, is getting the maximum amount of hydrogen from the electrolysis process. Because we don't want our electrolyzer to be running idle. So investors will lose money when the electrolyzer is lying idle. It will be a higher cost for the end use customers as well. And lowering the cost of green hydrogen is also very important, because people would not be willing to pay about 5 times more for a cleaner fuel when we could pay 30 cents per kilowatt hour for natural gas. People wouldn't want to pay 5 times more for hydrogen. And one of the main challenges is mastering economies of scale. That is to say, if you're producing hydrogen at a gigawatt scale, the cost of hydrogen per kilogram would be much lower than when we're producing it at a kilowatt or a megawatt scale. So in the next slide, I'll actually be explaining some of the research that I did in this area, that is to overcome the operational challenges for power to hydrogen. So what I did was I took 2 electrolyzers. That is a low temperature electrolyzer, that's the proton exchange membrane, which is operated at a low temperature. That means lower amp time, but it also means lower efficiency when compared to a high temperature electrolyzer, which operates at a high temperature, that is it uses steam. However, it has a high ramp rate as a result of that, but it also has a much higher efficiency when compared to the low temperature electrolyzer. So as you can see in that graph, so the total amount of hydrogen produced in each case that I'm considering is different for the 2 electrolyzers. So what I did was I took the same amount of electricity, presented that electricity profile in different ways in the next slide. So I have the base case, that is the forecasted wind curtail data that was projected by backbone model. Then this data was presented in 3 different ways. That is as a daily profile, where it is not changing throughout the day. That is the same constant profile for a day, but it's changing every day of the year. And then in case C, I'm taking the same constant profile throughout the year. And then in case D, it's changing every hour, the curtail profile, but it's the same profile for every single day of the month. So these are the different ways. So the reason I'm using these profiles is because these are the ways investors could potentially summarize wind curtail data in order to see how they can obtain the maximum return on their investment. So what the results I obtained was that in a high temperature electrolyzer, there's maximum hydrogen production when there's a continuous stream of electricity throughout the year. So that means it operates at its maximum efficiency, we get the most amount of hydrogen. However, for the low temperature electrolyzer, there was little change in the 4 cases. So in case A, there was a certain amount. In case B, there was slightly higher. Case C was similar, but there is not much variation between the 4 cases. And that's not to say that one electrolyzer is better than the other, but it's to say that we need scenario-specific applications of hydrogen, of electrolyzers in particular, to maximize hydrogen. So a high temperature electrolyzer, for example, could be suitable for and when we're using solar electricity, when we know that there will be a continuous stream of electricity, and low temperature electrolyzer could be suitable for, let's say, wind, where it's more erratic. So we can maximize the hydrogen production. So it is increased, sorry, could you go to the next slide? So I hope that what we could take from this is, firstly, let's increase the efficiency of our energy we're currently using, interconnect our systems, and then move to a completely zero carbon systems where we can get maximum, where we can obtain our maximum energy from the least amount of resources. And to leave you on a positive note, so some of the leading top leaders in hydrogen around the world. So we have Australia, which is blessed with a lot of renewable electricity sources such as solar, offshore wind. We have UK, UK, they're currently considering a hydrogen city. Vaitea already mentioned in Netherlands, in Rotterdam, they're also considering to build a hydrogen city in Japan as well. And I've linked all of these projects, which are very, very interesting, that's going on around the world. And that's it from my side. If you could go to the next slide. Just want to thank all my team at the UCD Energy Institute for helping me with my research, and I'm open to any questions. I hope you found it interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aruna. That was awesome. So now we will move into the policy perspective and the last speaker. And we are very glad to have Felicia Mester with us today. Felicia is a senior policy advisor at Hydrogen Europe and responsible for carbon market refund, hydrogen regulatory framework, and renewable energy policy files. Previously, she joined the energy sector with the Global Solar Council, where she worked on renewable energy policy files and communication strategy. Also, she worked previously with Gas, where she focused on EU internal gas market regulation, taxation, and hydrogen technologies. So Felicia basically is our expert when it comes to the policy, and we are really looking forward to hear more from you, Felicia. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. It's interesting to have the very different perspectives from the very different parts. So thanks for putting together such a good spectrum of speakers coming truly from different parts. I don't know how well acquainted you are with the notion of being a lobbyist or a hydrogen advocate, but essentially what I do in my daily job is, well, in a very fun way, I am a hydrogen lobbyist, but also I am a very big advocate of hydrogen uptake, all colors of hydrogen really, but of course mostly green hydrogen, especially now that we're looking at the energy transition and the ongoing legislative package of the European Commission. So what I do every day is I talk about hydrogen, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about hydrogen storage. But just before that, I'm going to introduce Hydrogen Europe, and then I'll give some quick reactions because my presentation isn't as lengthy as the one of my other fellow panelists. So I'm going to take the chance to do that because that's what I usually do on panels. So I represent Hydrogen Europe, an association that brings together diverse industry players, large companies, and SMEs who support the delivery of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. We do this to enable the adoption of an abundant and reliable energy, which efficiently fuels Europe's low carbon and clean and sustainable, and you can call it whatever, European economy. Some reactions to what I've heard before. It's really interesting because basically everything that I hear, I can translate into policies, and such things like the circular economy or the energy transition or jobs or innovation can be very easily translated into what I'm currently doing every day. So I was really interested. It was really interesting that I heard about hard to electrify sectors or what is hard to electrify. There, hydrogen can play a role. I don't really think that hydrogen plays a role only when we cannot electrify. I think hydrogen plays a role in all sectors of the EU's economy. And the fact that we have 56 people, I think, on the line right now, listening to me, listening to my other panelists about hydrogen clearly points to that. It's interesting that we talk about heating technologies and we talk about fossil fuels. And here I just want to say also that I was really happy to hear that. I think Aruna, it was you who said, or anyway, one of you said hydrogen boiler, and it was quite interesting that you mentioned that it's burning hydrogen but not natural gas, because I hear so much in Brussels saying we have fossil fuel technologies, and I keep saying that boilers are not really a fossil fuel or not fossil fuel technologies. It's what they burn. And of course, when you burn hydrogen, you get to a net zero solution for heating. Why hydrogen? There's also a comment on, because we're looking to integrate renewable electricity. Respect those who think so. Personally, I don't think we use hydrogen because we want to integrate renewable electricity. We want to use hydrogen because it's a net zero solution. It solves grid bottlenecks in a way that electricity cannot. And I think the example of what I've heard before of we curtail renewable electricity in order to preserve or protect system security, but we end up using fossil fuel energy in a way anyway, is a very great example in the sense because it is the system efficiency that we have to be looking at. It is hydrogen that is needed to solve grid bottlenecks and integrate new technologies where renewable electricity just cannot do anything, but also solve grid bottlenecks and make sure that renewable energy can get to the end consumer. It's not really about system protection, I think, but more about adequate planning. And we have plenty of those institutions that are supposed to be planning our grid in a way that it actually makes sense. And here I'm talking in terms of policy for about the 10-year network development plan that is planned at length by the European Commission together with NSOG and NSOE, representing TSOs, so transmission system operators. And just the other thing that I'm going to refer to is also about people paying a certain increased price for hydrogen. And I think, Aruna, you're the one who mentioned that people will not be willing to do that if the price is very high. And indeed, I agree with that. We need to ensure that hydrogen is very affordable for everyone. At the same time, I think here it's important to say that it depends what consumers we're talking about, because we have consumers who are willing to pay a premium, and those are industry consumers, for example. So here we need to really make sure that we have the right policies in place. And currently we're working on one of those that is a guarantee of origin system. And I'm happy to give any of you some further details if you're curious about it. But essentially it's meant to prove that consumers or industries are using green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, whatever they want. So there are very many, and this is really great news for people like Enapter, that we have very many consumers who are really willing to pay a premium for green energy. And then also, I think it's worth mentioning the subsidy schemes. I mean, this is exactly why I said earlier in one of the comments that we need a dedicated regulatory framework for hydrogen. We need to ensure that we can channel those subsidies to producers such as Enapter, to electrolyzer producers, to industries who can use green energy and produce green ammonia and so on. So these were my comments, and I'm just going to jump in and give you some insight into hydrogen, and I hope I'm going to answer some of the questions that I already see popping up on the questions box. As I said, grid bottlenecks, essentially the biggest challenge facing economies in their drive to decarbonize is long-term seasonal storage. Hydrogen can be safely stored in different formations, most easily in salt caverns. And in Germany alone, the salt cavern capacity is around 9,400 terawatt hour, both onshore and offshore. On top of that, existing gas assets, including gas storage and gas grid, represent around 230 terawatt hour in caverns and around 130 terawatt hour in the grid. Of course, some of you hydrogen lovers are going to tell me that there are energy density differences and that the energy density of hydrogen is lower than that of natural gas. But even if we take into consideration all these characteristics and conversion losses, the volumes of hydrogen storage are still going to be so big if you compare them to any other technology. And here, part of my job is to kind of turn around arguments. So I'm going to turn it around when talking about hydrogen inefficiencies in terms of storage or grid or whatever. And I will say that the risk to fail storing valuable renewable energy and failing to decarbonize quicker as a consequence is a much greater problem than any inefficiencies hydrogen storage might have. As such, I think we need to look at hydrogen storage beyond the sole need for flexibility for the electricity grid. Hydrogen storage is first and foremost needed to cover load imbalances in the network. This is one of the other grid bottlenecks that I mentioned before, ensure security of energy supply. The imbalances are daily, so essentially low demand at night, weekly low demand on weekends, or seasonal low demand in the summer. Currently, those are managed by conventional power plants, as Aruna has mentioned before as well. But as we move away from them and replace them with variable renewables, not only will we lose this balancing capacity of conventional power plants, but also renewables will create challenges of their own related to their variability and non-dispatchability. A good example is the fact that solar produces more in summer and wind during the night, which is precisely when there's less demand for energy. Then add on top of that, the electrification of various sectors, such as heating, which would further increase the seasonal imbalance in demand for electricity. Energy balancing issues are already a major challenge. And this is what I spoke about a bit earlier when we talked about security and securing our grid. And if we look at Germany, for example, where in 2018, over 5 terawatt-hour of energy was curtailed. And this is happening while the renewables penetration levels in Germany are still quite modest, at about 1%, give or take, of total electricity supply. And that is, by the way, the amount that we curtailed, enough to fuel over 500,000 of fuel cell vehicles. If this energy was converted to hydrogen, nothing done at all. But as renewables increase in the energy mix, so will the amount of curtailed energy. In a system with 100% renewables, the curtailment increases to over 110 terawatt-hour, which if converted to hydrogen would allow to fuel over 10 million fuel cell vehicles. There are large-scale sources of flexibility, and I'd like to put this in perspective, and I'll stick to the German example for the time being. The entire pumped hydro energy storage capacity in Germany is only around 0.04 terawatt-hour, which is enough to support grid balancing, but on its own won't really be sufficient. What about energy storage using batteries, like the Tesla energy storage facility in Australia, which is the biggest one that we have today? Well, we would need 10,200 of those facilities at a cost of 1.5 trillion euros to get storage capacity for less than a single day of electricity consumption in Germany. What about smart grids and smart charging and using the battery electric vehicles for grid balancing? Even 100% vehicles in Germany would be battery electric vehicles. This would also provide only around the same capacity as the Tesla battery parks I just talked about. I'm going to leave it here, but I just want to say that this is not to mention that other storage solutions don't have a place in our future energy grids. They do, they clearly do, for short-term balancing, surely for mid-term, perhaps. However, we need to be mindful of the importance to develop sustainable, large-scale, seasonal energy storage, and that is going to be hydrogen. Today, we do not have a better option than hydrogen. And if I didn't convince you of that, then I'm very happy to have a conversation with you afterwards.
Thank you so much, Felicia, for amazing presentation. And I think I have some questions for our speakers today. So I will start with Vaitea. So according to the EU hydrogen strategy, they want to scale up and vision, and they want to create hydrogen clusters or valleys in which they gather all the hydrogen application in one place. So is this something also Enapter sees happening already, or do you have any strategy development to create such clusters or valleys?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. We're actually in Saerbeck, right? This is in North Rhine-Westphalia, where we have our campus location, and they have a whole strategy around hydrogen in terms of using it for all the different mobility applications, whether it's for road transportation, but also trains, and they're looking into planes. So they really are looking at how to develop this hydrogen infrastructure and to really create the production and the demand, and of course, the distribution of hydrogen. So at a local level, for where we chose our campus to be, this has already taken place, but also at an international level, we can already see the different clusters kind of, growing, and where we're also playing more of an active role to supply megawatt scale electrolyzers as well. So I think this is one way to have some showcases and also to create this sort of hydrogen momentum in different regions for them to kind of, scale out also at a greater international level.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so I thought maybe it's better if we move the question to, one question per speaker, as we have plenty of questions from the participant. So the second question is for Aruna. So we know that the research and development plays an important role to scale up the hydrogen and also allow the new applications. But which area you think is critical at the moment, and we need, for example, further research and further innovations? Is it, for example, the generation? Is it the storage? Is it the distribution? What is the or is the sector that really needs major attention? Aruna, you are muted.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So in my opinion, I think from a research and development angle, we need to look at first maximizing the efficiency of production. And that's the most critical point right now, because even if we move to a zero carbon future in the next, which we will in the next 20 or 30 years, but if we don't use our fuels or we don't produce our fuels efficiently, it's of no use, because we're not utilizing, we're still utilizing more resources to achieve the same amount of energy at the end use. So I think currently we need to maximize the efficiency of hydrogen production. That's one of the most important things. And I think the second most important thing would be the safety concerns for hydrogen, because even injecting 20% volume of hydrogen in the pipelines, the safety measures are of utmost importance when we're applying this in the real world.
Yeah, I also agree with that. Yeah. Thank you so much. And the last question, no, not the last. Okay, so my question is to Felicia. So according to the EU strategies, they always highlights the importance of green hydrogen, more than the other colors. So is there also a policy instrument that wants to ensure to use only green hydrogen in the future, more than the other colors?
I think that it's quite clear that the end goal is to use green hydrogen. Right now, it's only a matter of scaling up. There are very many policy-related instruments, one of which is the Renewable Energy Directive, for example, that was essentially reviewed about 1.5 to 2 years ago. It hasn't even been implemented in all member states yet. And we're already reviewing it with a view to ensuring that green hydrogen is going to be scaled up faster, that the requirements to prove additionality are going to be a bit more defined a bit differently for electrolyzers to be able to make sure that they can produce in a faster manner. But also we're reviewing the carbon market reform right now. And that is ensuring essentially that we have higher CO2 pricing through the emissions trading scheme. We're ensuring that we give subsidies and we stop subsidizing fossil fuels, and we subsidize green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen producers. And I think it is quite clear that the end goal is green hydrogen. Is just a matter of having enough renewable electricity to produce enough green hydrogen. But we're also looking at green hydrogen imports, for example. And this is why I said that a guarantee of origin system, we're looking into a system of certification to ensure that hydrogen that we would be even importing from other countries would be indeed green hydrogen.
And if I may just jump in here in regards to, how to really focus on green hydrogen, which I think ultimately is where we want to get to. I think in regards to the policy that we need is really in terms of the regulatory requirements, right? Permitting needs to be easier. The process of integrating green hydrogen needs to be less lengthy and less bureaucratic, the cost as well. So yeah, if I can just plant some seeds and pass the message, much appreciated.
Yeah,
take it on board.
All right, so my last question for all the speakers before jumping to the participant question is, I'm pretty sure that most of the audience are young people, young professionals or students. So what you believe young minds should know when going into hydrogen or energy sector, what are the skills or competencies you believe are crucial, so we prepare them and so they are ready for any challenges that might arise when moving to the energy sector, start working and so on.
I may start. Oh, sorry.
Please, Aruna, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So I think one thing is that we need to, when you're getting into the hydrogen sector, whether that's research or industry or policy, it's that we need to rethink the way that our energy system is built. And that is to say, so currently the way our energy system is built is we have certain challenges for hydrogen, but that is because that's not catered for hydrogen. We built it keeping in mind that we'll have fossil fuels throughout our life. So we need to make a lot of changes in the way we are thinking about energy, use them efficiently, maximize, integrate all the processes, centralize the systems, make maximum. I think that is what is essentially important. We need to think sustainably about hydrogen as well.
Yeah, I think just to build up on that, you know, in regards to, we need to rethink the way we're producing and using energy. I think in regards to like the new skill force that should be coming on board, I mean, we're not going to solve our problems with how we've been trying to, with what created the problem in the first place, right? So we need to come up with like new solutions, new ways of thinking. And so at Enapter, we look more for a mindset rather than a skill set, because a skill set you can teach, you can learn, but a mindset that's harder to change. So we're actually hiring 300 people. So if you're interested in joining us, we're looking for a lot of different individuals who are committed to fighting climate change with green hydrogen. So yeah, and there's going to be a lot of applications for green hydrogen. So there's so many innovations that we can come up with, you know, like wherever you think green hydrogen can play a role. That's essentially what we want to showcase at Generation Hydrogen, to showcase all these decentralized applications for hydrogen. So lots of space for innovation.
I think from my side, really, the advice that I got at a certain point, and that was really good for me in my job search, but also in my career in Brussels, was know your stuff. Do know your stuff. There are very many people who are speaking about hydrogen. There are very many people who are speaking about energy efficiency, about I don't know, heating solutions and all that. And I think we are the generation that really know our stuff. We are overly educated, overly, read, overly traveled, and so on, due to who we are, due to us being Generation Hydrogen, as I've heard before. We had actually a campaign when I worked in solar, and we were Generation Solar. So there we go. We're Generation Renewable Energy, and that's great. So know your stuff and stay truthful to what you believe, and you'll definitely find the team where you fit best.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was, I think, clear advices for everyone. All right, so now we have unfortunately, a couple of minutes, and we can start with the question and answer session. So here we have a question for Felicia, who is currently leading in Europe in the sphere of green hydrogen adoption, and how is Germany unique in this? Any special policy from Germany?
I mean, Germany is one of the first ones who actually are leading on the ETS. So I think, I mean, I don't know about, I'm not going to go into very big details on who's leading on what in Germany and on adaptation technologies and so on. But I can tell you that we're thinking about a way, or the European Commission is thinking of a way of pricing CO2 in sectors such as road transportation, maritime, buildings, for instance. And of course, the challenges are very big. So Germany is one of those countries where they were the first ones to come up with their own way. Well, they were one of the first ones to come up with their hydrogen strategy, but also they're one of the first ones to come up with how we actually price CO2 in road transport. How do we do that in buildings? So definitely an innovation driven country in terms of policies as well. And we're definitely looking at all of those in how we are going to shape this in Brussels.
Okay, I think that's really a clear answer. All right, so I think we have here also another question for you. Since hydrogen is an energy carrier associated with energy losses, is indirect electrification from variable renewables the most cost-efficient solution for easier abate sectors? If a green hydrogen is not fully supported at the moment, how can someone advocate for clean energy and zero emissions as long as fossil fuels or other carbon-intensive energy sources are used for production?
That's a long question, but okay. I mean, there are very many. It's it's a kind of question that you have over beer and then you talk for the rest of the evening. I mean, there are so many sides to it. Define efficient and define, affordable. Is it efficient to electrify all the heating systems on a road? Probably not efficient, even on the same street. Why? Because the electricity grid, as any other grid, has a certain capacity and a certain peak until which they can go. So at a certain point, you will need to essentially change all your infrastructure in order to make sure that it can handle another peak demand. Is it efficient? I don't know. Maybe it's efficient to do it directly in a perfect world. Yes, it is efficient, but we don't live in a perfect world. So we do need all the solutions working together towards net zero. I'm conscious of that, and I really believe in that. But I think what is efficient has to become a bit more granular, because there is no one solution that works for absolutely everything. There are so many characteristics to take into account, especially when we have 27 member states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. All right, so and now we have a question for Vaitea. What is the support Enapter needs from EU?
Oh, good question. But to be honest, we have no specific demand because we are focusing on driving down the cost of electrolyzers, and we're delivering this so far without any political support. So I think it's more like, what does the hydrogen industry need? And I touched upon it when I jumped on the occasion to tell Felicia in regards to the regulatory requirements. But I think another request from the green hydrogen industry from a policy standpoint was to make green hydrogen, attractive for the demand side. And I think in the EU, if we want to be a leader in green hydrogen, then we need to be in a position to produce green hydrogen competitively. And so the operational cost, the OPEX, needs to be attractive. So our scope as an electrolyzer manufacturer is to focus on bringing down the CapEx, the electrolyzer cost down. But even if we were to make free electrolyzers, we can't change the OPEX, right? The operating cost is not our own. And so this would be something where we would say, hey, I think that's also something that we can work on to make the OPEX more attractive.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, and our last question is for Aruna. I'm sorry, just a second. Okay, is there a governmental policy instrument that you think is essential for scaling up hydrogen storage and distribution?
A government policy. So there are currently, for example, for end-use technologies such as heat pumps or for retrofitting buildings, there are government grants. But for electrolyzers or for hydrogen technologies in specific, I think government subsidies or carbon taxing is what will encourage investors and companies to shift towards more hydrogen-based technologies. So I think driving up the carbon tax, but also putting regulations in place that makes hydrogen cost competitive and providing grants or subsidies for more greener technologies would be the way to go for hydrogen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we reached at the end of the webinar, and I will pass it to my colleague Kate to close up the session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Aisha, and thank you so much for your great job moderating. We just want to say thank you to everyone, specifically thank you to our speakers, thank you to Aruna, thank you to Felicia, thank you to Vaitea for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. This was incredibly informative and inspiring, and maybe people will get job opportunities out of it. We will definitely share your slides. Thank you for letting us do that. We'll share them with people. And would it be okay with you if people have any questions, we can pass them along to you at a later date? Other than that, we just want to say thank you to all the participants for joining us. And if you'd like to follow for more webinars or follow our journey at YES Europe, please see the social media that we have here on the screen. And please look into joining a local chapter in your country. But other than that, I just say thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. And once again, thank you so much to our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.